the politics of all of this. And there isn't, outside of Scotland at least, a political party that is espousing rejoining. The SNP, of course, are, and that's the reason why they want independence, given they don't think the UK as a whole is going to rejoin. The crucial thing here, of course, is the position of the Labour Party together with that of the Liberal Democrats, both of whom campaigned for a second referendum in 2019, but both of whom have since decided to drop Brexit, although Labour has now edged fairly firmly in the direction of wanting a softer Brexit, albeit definitely not joining the customs union or the single market. Now, this slide would suggest to you that there's an obvious logic to Labour's position. If we break down their support according to how people voted in 2016, the party has made quite substantial progress since 2019 amongst those who are Leave voters, doubling from 17 points to 34 points, whereas the progress amongst Remain voters has been rather more modest. Indeed, the Labour's vote, although it's still more pro-Remain by this criterion, it's now no more pro-Remain than it was back in 2015. However, this is looking at things with reference to how people voted in 2016. I've already told you some people have changed their minds, and you can show that two things about some of the people who've changed their minds. One is that they're more likely to be people who voted Labour in 2019. And the second thing you can show is that if they didn't vote Labour in 2019, they are more likely to have swung to Labour since 2019 than are those who have not changed their minds about Brexit. Therefore, if you actually look at the relationship between people's current attitudes towards Brexit and whether they're in favour, I break that down by rejoin and stay out, then Labour's vote begins to look rather more in the way of being still a vote where it's people who want to vote to rejoin, whereas in the previous slide, it was suggesting that only around 60% of Labour's vote was a Remain vote, but 70% of its vote is actually a rejoin vote. But still, it's made rather more progress amongst those who would vote to stay out. That said, however, of course, the other crucial reason why the Labour Party has been pursuing this path of not wanting to get too soft on Brexit is because of the presumed views of those people who vote for the party in Red Wall or constituencies. Now, here I'm defining Red Wall very loosely. These are simply constituencies which Labour lost to the Conservatives in 2019 and where a majority of people voted to leave. I'm having to go back to May of last year before the more recent increase in support for rejoining, because the only source in which I can do this analysis is the British election study, and the most recent survey of that is for May of last year. But what I invite you to note is the extent to which even in constituencies, in fact, particularly in constituencies in which Labour lost to the Conservatives in 2019, the party is actually very reliant on rejoin voters. Not least, and this is perhaps something that tends to be missed, is that because the Liberal Democrats are so much weaker in these constituencies than they are across England and Wales as a whole, the Labour Party actually is more popular amongst rejoin voters in Red Wall seats than it is across the country as a whole. And it's also the case, by the way, that it looks as though these Red Wall constituencies are places which in particular are more likely to have swung around to being in favour of the European Union. Put those two things together and actually Labour's support in so-called Red Wall seats is just as pro-rejoining the European Union as is the Labour vote if you use current preference across the country as a whole. At least that was the position last spring. It will therefore be pretty crucial to see what emerges when we get a more recent version of a British election study, hopefully after the spring of this year.